time when Sheppard were just absolutely on fire. The platinum records are coming in. They were on every ad on TV. They were all over the radio. It was really hot and amazing, especially the fact that we did it independently. I sensed from you there was this underlying frustration that there was not greater support and embrace from the Australian music industry. And I certainly noticed that, it seemed to be kind of cool to hate Sheppard at that time, right? And that was a really frustrating thing for you. Do you know what that was? And do you think it was because you stayed independent and you didn't have, if you signed to Universal, what, I have 60% market share? So you don't have 60% of the Australian music industry, championing them? What do you put it down to?
Oh, I mean, we had a lot of support as well. So there were, I think, maybe a part of like tall poppy syndrome in Australia is there. I think the style of music, I think that the industry that we know and that go to Big Sound and, hang around, they're all quite alternative minded as well. So they saw this independent act and they went, well, that's not really indie, is it? It's like, well, it is because it's independent. And I think that there was just a little bit of, people were surprised by their success and, maybe they didn't like the band stylistically, but I think that they respected what they'd been able to achieve with commercial radio, especially, and their touring growth and the fact that the audience was out there ready to embrace it. But in terms of the backlash, I mean, artists are always they always tend to focus on some of the negative comments that they might see, and there are other artists successful at the moment that get a lot of that same kind of tall poppy syndrome. Like,
well, we were just on the last episode, we were just talking to Regan, Tones and I's manager, about
Exactly.
Tones and I going through it to an obscenely harsh scale right now. So,
and like Courtney Barnett gets backlash. It's like people look at things that are successful and they're like they don't understand it, so they might attack it. And I think that there was a little bit of that with Sheppard, and a lot of nonsense came out as well at the time. People making up silly stories about them and that kind of thing. So we had to be aware of the media's opinion of them, but at the same time, I think their success spoke for itself, and there was enough genuine, true fans that were loving the music that we were able to at least navigate through it to the point where they were able to keep going and keep releasing great songs and being successful.
do you also think the sentiment of pop music has changed? Because I feel like pop music was really uncool and daggy for a long time, and now it's cool to love the Veronicas. It's, even although it might be tongue-in-cheek, it's fun to love Shannon Knoll. There's all of these, I just feel like pop music is no longer uncool. There was this one moment when I think it was Mark Ronson did a collab with Bruno Mars.
Yeah.
And it got added to Triple J. And I can't even remember who the on-air presenter was, but they played the song for first time or one of the early times and it got added. And they were like, and that was Mark Ronson and Bruno Mars. The only time we'll ever be accepted to play Bruno Mars on air.
Yeah.
But with that song, Bruno Mars suddenly became cool. And I feel like pop music is now far more embraced than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I think throwback culture is a bit to do with it as well. Like the pop artists of the 80s, and like Talking Heads or something like that, and now the 90s, like they're all pop artists. And, kids, when they have that element of like calling back records from the 80s and 90s or the 2000s now, they're talking about pop music. And so there's the nostalgia factor with artists like Veronica's and Shannon Knoll that it's cool to kind of be a bit, ironic in that sense. But I think it comes down to the music, to be honest, and the fans as well. I think with Triple J seeing the success of Billie Eilish and Post Malone on their station, they realised that kids aren't necessarily segmenting themselves as alternative music fans or pop music fans. They're just like, okay, I'm going to listen to whatever's cool. And I remember when I think it was like Nick Jonas came out with something, and you couldn't pick that it was a Jonas brother with this new song. It's just they'd completely shifted over to like a more contemporary style of music. So at the end of the day, I think the artists in that space have the ability to pivot, when and if they see fit. And I kind of think good on radio and good on the fan base and Spotify for embracing that as well. Because if you stick to your guns too much, then you're going to lose the fans. And I think if Triple J's kept like a very anti-pop stance, then they'd be doing their audience a disservice and probably themselves a disservice. But at the end of the day, the artists are the ones who are creating that music, and it's doing well for the fans and it's doing well for the stations that are playing it.